evening. Welcome to today's webinar, which is a briefing to present the outcomes of the 20th meetings of the Chemical Review Committee and the POPs Review Committee. Thank you for taking time out and being here today. We will start this session by first presenting the outcomes of the 20th meeting of the Chemical Review Committee, as well as its intersessional work. And then the second part of the webinar will be covered by my colleague Sharon Rivera, that will present the outcomes of the 20th meeting of the POPs Review Committee. The 20th meeting of the Chemical Review Committee, CRC 20, took place from the 17th to the 20th of October 2024 at the headquarters of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. This meeting was chaired by Ms. Noluzuku Wai from South Africa, and it was attended by 93 participants, including 28 members of the committee and 65 observers. The Chemical Review Committee is a subsidiary body under the Rotterdam Convention and is responsible for reviewing chemicals and pesticide formulations according to the criteria set out by the Convention in Annexes 2 and 4, respectively, and make recommendations to the Conference of the Parties for listing such chemicals in Annex 3. In order to undertake its review, the committee will look at notifications of final regulatory action for chemicals that have been banned or severely restricted in at least 2 parties from 2 different peak regions of the Rotterdam Convention, and the committee will also review proposals of severely hazardous pesticide formulations that can be submitted by any party which is a country, developing country, or a country with economy in transition. At this 20th meeting, the committee, under its technical work, finalized 2 draft decision guidance documents. It reviewed up to 39 notifications of final regulatory actions on 19 different chemicals, as well as 4 proposals of severely hazardous pesticide formulations, SHPFs. All the meeting documents are available on the website. You can see the link at the bottom of this slide. Under its technical work, the committee reviewed 2 draft decision guidance documents. The first one is for chlorpyrifos, which is a pesticide which is widely applied as an insecticide in agriculture. The listing of this chemical in Annex 3 was already recommended by the committee at its 19th meeting, based on notifications submitted by the European Union, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka, which were found to meet the criteria set out in Annex 2. With that, the committee decided to prepare draft decision guidance documents, DGDs, that were prepared during the in-sessional period in advance of the 20th meeting of the committee. At this last meeting, the committee adopted the draft decision guidance document and forwarded it to the Conference of the Parties, which will be meeting in the spring of 2025. Together with this draft DGD and the recommendation to list chlorpyrifos in Annex 3, this information will be considered by the Rotterdam Convention COP at its next meeting in 2025. Also important to mention that chlorpyrifos is a chemical that is also considered for listing under the Stockholm Convention for persistent organic pollutants, and that will also be considered by the COP in 2025. The second draft decision guidance document is for mercury. Mercury is an industrial chemical which is widely used for different products and components of several medical and measuring devices. The recommendation for listing in Annex 3 was concluded by the committee at its last meeting in 2023, based on notifications of final regulatory action from Colombia and the European Union. During the sessional work, the committee developed a draft decision guidance document for mercury, which was adopted at CRC 20 and also forwarded to the Conference of the Parties, which together with the recommendation for listing will take it into consideration for discussion in the next Conference of the Parties in 2025. Also important to mention that mercury is also a chemical that is considered under the Minamata Convention on Mercury. Before moving into the next technical work undertaken by the committee at its 20th meeting, this slide lists the chemicals that would be considered by the Conference of the Parties at its next meeting, COP12. We have the 4 new chemicals that have been recommended for listing by recent CRC meetings, including the 2 that I just mentioned, chlorpyrifos and mercury, as well as methyl bromide, which is a chemical under the pesticide category, which is also included in the Montreal Protocol, and paraquat under the pesticide category. Letter to inform parties and signatories was sent out on the 4th of October 2024 regarding these new chemicals recommended for listing, and with an invitation for comments to be received by the Secretariat by the 14th of February 2025. Additionally, the next Conference of the Parties will consider chemicals that have been discussed in previous meetings of the COP, but for which no agreement has been yet reached. This includes acetochlor in the pesticide category, carbosulfan also as a pesticide, chrysotal asbestos in the category of industrial chemicals, a severely hazardous pesticide formulation for fenthion, iprodion as a pesticide, and liquid formulations also in the category of SHPFs containing paraquat dichloride. And then we go into the additional work conducted by CRC 20, and this is for proposals of severely hazardous pesticide formulations that were submitted to the Secretariat by a party to the convention, which is the Lao People's Democratic Republic. Of these 4 formulations, the committee agreed that one of them, methomyl soluble powder 40%, did not meet the criteria as set out in Annex 4. And for the other 3 proposals, the committee could not conclude its review and decided to defer the discussions to its next meeting, CRC 21. The proposal submitted by the Lao People's Democratic Republic is a result of a monitoring study that they conducted nationally in certain regions of this country and identified that there were some health adverse effects in population which was exposed to these formulations. In consideration for the review of those formulations that have been deferred to the next meeting, the committee also decided to establish an in-sessional task group with a 2-fold mandate. The first one was to update the information containing document that was already reviewed in a previous meeting of the committee at CRC 14. This document includes a collection of examples of SHPF proposals that have been reviewed by the committee in the past. And the purpose of updating this document is to identify possible gaps in information that is needed for the committee to decide on the criteria of these formulations. The second purpose of this intersessional group is to review the Human Health Incident Report and Environmental Incident Report forms that are used by parties to send their proposals of this type of formulations. And the task group will propose a revision as needed for consideration at CRC 21 to support improved information collection for the committee's decision making for this particular type of formulations. Additionally, the committee at its 20th meeting reviewed notifications of final regulatory actions for other chemicals, including chlorpyrifos methyl, which is in the pesticide category. The notification submitted by the European Union was found to meet Annex II criteria. However, since there was no other notification for that particular chemical, a listing recommendation will need then to wait until a second notification from another peak region is reviewed by the committee. Regarding paraquat and paraquat dichloride, there were notifications from Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, Senegal, and Togo, which were found to meet Annex II criteria. Now, for this chemical, paraquat and paraquat dichloride, the committee had already considered this chemical at its 18th meeting and recommended its listing in Annex 3, including the development of a draft decision guidance document, which was adopted at this 19th meeting. This has already been forwarded to the Conference of the Parties to discuss at its next meeting. And since the CAS number and the category submitted by these countries from the African region coincides with the previous recommendation for listing and the decision guidance document, there is no further action to be taken for the recommendation and the DGD already prepared by the committee. The committee also looked at other chemicals for which additional information will be required from the notifying party. Therefore, the discussion has been deferred to its next meeting. One of them is dichlorvofos, and the committee considered that additional information was necessary from the notifying country, in this case the European Union, particularly on the risk evaluation involving prevailing conditions within the European Union. There was also dicofo, for which notifications from Chile, Peru, Switzerland, and Turkey were received and forwarded to the committee. However, due to the heavy agenda at that meeting, the committee was not able to review at the time. Then there are notifications from Mozambique. These include carbaryl, ethion, and thiodicarb, chlorphenimphos and methylethion. For the latter, chlorphenimphos and methylethion, the committee also considered that it was necessary to invite the notifying party to provide additional information, in the case for chlorphenimphos, on the use of this pesticide in veterinary conditions. And in the case of methylethion, the committee is looking for information related to the import of methylethion in Mozambique. So once that information is available, the committee will take again the review of these chemicals at a future meeting. There were also notifications of FRAs submitted by Malaysia, including profenophos, penthoate, prothiophos, acinalphos. After the review at this last meeting, the committee considered that additional information is required to complete this review, and therefore information will be sought from the notifying country, particularly on the residue monitoring survey conducted by the country, as well as the types of maximum residue levels used for those pesticides, and the observed exceedances in the maximum residue levels regarding how they were evaluated. The committee also looked at the identification of substances covered by the listing of PFOA, its salts, and PFOA related compounds. There is an update on the indicative list of PFOA, its salts, and PFOA related compounds that is prepared by the Secretariat, taking into account received the comments received during the meetings of the committee. The meeting report of CRC 20 will be available in English as an advanced version in early November for reporting, and then for decisions at the end of November. The language versions will be available early in 2025, with the date still to be confirmed. Regarding the next meeting of the committee, CRC 21, this is tentatively scheduled for 22 to 26 of September 2025 at the headquarters of FAO in Rome. And that will be organized back to back with the 21st meeting of the POPs Review Committee. With this, I finalize this part of the session. We will be coming back for questions, but first I pass the microphone to my colleague, Sharon Rivera. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sharon Rivera from the BRS Secretariat, and I'm really sorry for my voice. I have a sore throat right now, but I hope I can be comprehensible, and I'll try to be comprehensible in presenting this afternoon. So POPROC 20 was held back-to-back with CRC 20 from 23 to 27 September 2024 at the FAO headquarters. We had online pre-meetings on 11 September 2024, and the meeting was chaired by Mr. Peter Dawson of New Zealand. We had a total of 143 participants, including 30 members and 113 observers. The member from Sudan was not able to attend the meeting. All the meeting documents are available on the POPROC 20 website, the link of which you can see on screen. Now you will see here some of the key outcomes of the meeting. First of all, the committee considered the listing of 3 chemicals. First, chlorpyrifos, for which it adopted the risk management evaluation and recommended for listing in Annex A with specific exemptions. And secondly, the committee considered 2 chemicals which it had already recommended in its 19th meeting for listing in Annex A with specific exemptions. However, at its 20th meeting, the committee strengthened the recommendations for listing long-chain perfluorocarboxylic acids and related compounds, and further specified the exemptions, and also considered chlorinated paraffins with carbon chain lengths in the range C14 to 17, and chlorination levels at or exceeding 45% chlorine by weight, for which it also further specified the exemptions, as well as clarified the chemical identity and recommended concentration limits. The committee also considered the proposal submitted by Switzerland on the listing of polybrominated dibenzopidioxins and dibenzofurans and mixed polybrominated chlorinated dibenzopidioxins and dibenzofurans, and agreed that it met the screening criteria in Annex D, and agreed to prepare a risk profile in accordance with Annex E to the Convention. The committee also decided to submit a report on the options for identifying POPs in use and in waste, and on issues related to the production, import, and export of products and articles containing POPs, with a set of recommendations. The committee also provided comments on the draft evaluation and review of brominated diphenyl ethers, and also on the indicative list of PFOA, its salts, and PFOA-related compounds, and PFH-XS, its salts, and PFH-XS-related compounds. The report and decisions are to be made available on the POPROC 20 website soon. With regard to chlorpyrifos, the committee adopted the risk management evaluation for chlorpyrifos and decided to recommend to the COP its listing in Annex A to the Convention with specific exemptions for production and use for plant protection, control on ticks for cattle, and wood preservation. The committee, however, noted that some countries may require additional time to phase out uses of chlorpyrifos for certain other crop and pest combinations, such as for cotton, and to transition to alternatives. At this juncture, I also want to inform parties and signatories that the Secretariat had circulated a letter dated 25 October 2024 on the amendment proposals relating to the three chemicals with an invitation for comments by 14 February 2025. Moving on to chlorinated paraffins, the committee recalled its decision POPROC 19/1, in which it recommended to the COP that it consider listing chlorinated paraffins with carbon chain lengths in the range C14 to 17 and chlorination levels at or exceeding 45% chlorine by weight, subject to further specifying the chemical identity in Annex A to the Convention with specific exemptions. The committee assessed the information provided by parties and observers in accordance with decision POPROC 19/1 and thereafter adopted the risk management evaluation for chlorinated paraffins and decided to recommend to the COP that it consider listing the chemical with further specified exemptions that you see on the screen. The committee also clarified the chemical identity of chlorinated paraffins and recommended concentration limits, and in this regard also recommended an addition to Annex A of the Convention. The concentration limit does not apply to production and use of chlorinated paraffins with carbon chain lengths in the range C14 to 17 and chlorination level below 45% by weight for a period of 5 years from the date of entry into force of the amendment, subject to review by the COP at its 14th ordinary meeting and every second ordinary meeting thereafter. And the objective of this is to determine whether this period needs to be extended. Parties are obliged to notify the Secretariat of its intention to make use of this provision along with the information on intended uses. The use of chlorinated paraffins with carbon chain lengths in the range C14 to 17 and chlorination levels at or exceeding 45% chlorine by weight shall be eliminated except for parties that have notified the Secretariat of their intention to use them in accordance with Article 4. On this slide, you will also see the further specified exemptions that were agreed to by the committee. Moving on to the next chemical, with regard long-chain PFCAs, their salts and related compounds, the committee also recalled its decision, POPROC 19/2, in which it recommended to the COP that it consider listing long-chain PFCAs, their salts and related compounds in Annex A to the Convention with specific exemptions. At its 20th meeting, the committee assessed the information provided by parties and observers in accordance with decision POPROC 19/2 and adopted the addendum to the risk management evaluation for long-chain PFCAs, their salts and related compounds, and also further specified the exemptions, which you will see on the screen. In order to support parties and observers and to facilitate the identification of substances, an initial indicative list of long-chain PFCAs, their salts and related compounds has been prepared as set out in POPROC 20 document inf/17. The committee also decided to establish an intersessional working group to prepare a draft indicative list of long-chain PFCAs, their salts and related compounds, on the basis of the list set out in document POPROC 20 inf/17, and to provide comments on the indicative list of substances covered by the listing of PFOA, its salts and PFOA-related compounds, PFHXS, its salts, and PFHXS-related compounds for consideration by the committee at its 21st meeting. Further, the committee recommended that, should the COP decide to list long-chain PFCAs, their salts and related compounds, that it also establish a process for the identification of substances covered by such a listing. And this would take into account the similar process that had been established for identifying substances covered by the listing of PFOA, its salts and PFOA-related compounds, and PFHXS, its salts and PFHXS-related compounds. Next, the committee also considered the proposal submitted by Switzerland for the listing of PBDDFs and PBCDDFs. The committee undertook an evaluation of whether PBDDFs and PBCDDFs met the criteria of Annex D to the Convention, using as primary source the information contained in the proposal submitted by Switzerland. And this was circulated as POPROC document 20/5. The scope of the evaluation covered polybrominated dibenzopidioxins and dibenzofurans, PBDDFs, and mixed polybrominated chlorinated dibenzopidioxins and dibenzofurans, PBCDDFs. However, it excludes polychlorinated dibenzopidioxins and dibenzofurans, or PCDDFs, which are already listed in Annex C to the Convention. The committee agreed that they met the screening criteria in Annex D and decided to establish an ad hoc working group to further review the proposal and to prepare a draft risk profile in accordance with Annex E to the Convention. The committee also invited parties and observers to submit to the Secretariat the information specified in Annex E to the Convention before December 2, 2024. Next, the committee also agreed to submit a report to the 12th meeting of the COP on the options for identifying POPs in stockpiles, products, and articles in use and in waste, and on issues related to the production, import, and export of products and articles containing POPs with a set of recommendations. The committee recommended that the COP continue its work on improving the identification of POPs, especially taking into account the challenges experienced by developing countries with regard their need for capacity building and technical assistance to address those challenges. It also recommended that the Stockholm Convention COP continue its cooperation and coordination in other forums relevant to the identification of POPs in stockpiles, products, and articles in use and in waste. And this include forums such as the Basel Convention, the Rotterdam Convention, the INC, the IOMC, and the Special Program, among others, and to invite those international agreements and initiatives to consider the outcomes and information provided in the above report. The committee also recommended that the COP explore ways to improve the identification of POPs in products and articles through the harmonized commodity description and coding system, and to continue collaborating with the World Customs Organization. Finally, it recommended that the COP request the Secretariat to continue to raise awareness among parties of the already existing guidance relevant to the identification of POPs. Lastly, the committee provided comments on the draft evaluation and review of brominated diphenyl ethers pursuant to paragraph 2 of parts 4 and 5 of Annex A, as contained in POPROC document 20/7, as well as on the indicative list of PFOA salts and PFOA-related compounds, PFH excess, its salts, and PFH excess-related compounds. On the draft evaluation of BDEs, the committee agreed to entrust the Secretariat with the finalization of the draft report and the review of the continued need for specific exemptions, taking into account the comments made in plenary and additional submissions to the Secretariat in writing for consideration by the Conference of the Parties at its 12th meeting. On the indicative lists, based on the additional comments received from members and observers, the Secretariat prepared a revised version of the indicative list for PFOA, its salts, and PFOA-related compounds. Based on the said comments, there did not appear to be any need to update the list on PFH excess, its salts, and PFH excess-related compounds. Thank you very much for your attention. I just want to mention at this juncture that, as Mario mentioned, POPROC 21 will be held back-to-back with CRC 21 on September 29 to October 3, 2025. The meeting report and the decisions for POPROC 20 will be made available on the POPROC 20 website very soon in English and in all the official UN languages. Thanks very much, and I hand it back over to Mario.
Thank you, Sharon, for the presentation. And now we open the floor for anyone who would like to ask a question related to these briefings. You can raise your hand so that we can take note and give you the floor if you wish to speak, or you can also write your questions using the chat box at the bottom right of the screen. So please, if you have any questions, we will be happy to hear them and try to answer them. Raising a hand, but if you prefer to send your question using the chat box, please do so. For your message.
I see, hi Mario, I see a question from
Yes,
Rosaline.
Rosaline, yes.
Yes, will the MCCP recommendation be subject to any further consultations of the parties? Definitely, the recommendation by POPROC for the listing of MCCPs will be submitted to the 12th meeting of the COP for consideration by the COP. And in the meeting, it will be subject to discussion by the Conference of the Parties to the Stockholm Convention. So the answer is yes, it will definitely be subject to further consideration and consultations among parties. I hope I answered your question, Rosaline.
Any other questions from those who are still online on the session? I don't see any, so we can close the session. I want to thank you for joining us today, and also to Sharon for her presentation. And I would like to invite you to regularly visit the websites of the Rotterdam Stockholm Conventions for information related to the work of the POPs Review Committee and the Chemical Review Committee. Thank you very much for your attention, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you, everyone.